magazine, Andy Greenberg. He's the author of the new book, Sandworm, A New Era of Cyber War and the Hunt for the Kremlin's Most Dangerous Hackers. Andy, good morning. This is an incredible story that I confess I didn't really know about. I don't think most of our viewers probably know about, but that does touch the lives and the businesses of Americans in this country. Just explain a little bit, if you could. Summer of 2017, NotPetya, a Russian hacker attack. What was it and what were the targets?
Well, can I start first with Ukraine? Because that's where this story begins in some ways. And Ukraine is now in this global conversation all of a sudden because of Trump withholding military aid to the Ukrainian government and pressuring the Ukrainian president. But I've been looking at Ukraine since 2016, and I've watched this cyber war, the first true cyber war, unfold in Ukraine, where Russian hackers, a specific group of Russian hackers backed by the Kremlin called Sandworm, this group has been launching one unprecedented cyber attack in Ukraine after another that have hit the media, private industry, destroyed hundreds of computers, and then kind of climaxed in them turning off the power to hundreds of thousands of civilians twice. The first ever blackouts caused by hackers.
So this is Russia turning off the power in Ukraine.
In the midst of this Ukrainian war, this invasion of Ukraine by Russia, they've also launched a cyber war there. And over these years, I and a bunch of cybersecurity researchers who are the kind of characters of some of the characters in my book, they've been trying to warn that what is happening in Ukraine is that Russia is using the country, the entire country, as a test lab for cyber war, but that also what was happening in Ukraine would soon spill out. This cyber war would soon hit us in the West too. And ultimately that is what happens. In June of 2017, as you said, NotPetya, this piece of malware released by Sandworm, the hackers in my book, hit Ukraine, devastated the country's internet, took down hundreds of Ukrainian companies, hospitals, every government agency, multiple power companies were hit by this as well. But then within hours spread beyond Ukraine's borders, perhaps as an accident, perhaps collateral damage, but it spread and hit the world's largest shipping firm, Maersk, Merck, the pharmaceutical company, FedEx. In each case, it cost these companies hundreds of millions of dollars.
When you say it hit them, what does that mean?
It took down every computer in their global network. So I'm just talking about carpet bombing their IT systems. Everything was encrypted, essentially, but couldn't be, it was basically destroying all of their computers, spreading automatically from one to the next until they had no IT systems. And for Maersk, for instance, this was described to me as like staff looked up from their computers in their global headquarters in Copenhagen and saw just a wave of black screens going across the room, black, 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 as every computer in the entire, this massive conglomerate was destroyed. And then at the same time, in the port of Newark in New Jersey, that meant that cargo ships carrying tens of thousands of containers are arriving at this terminal, and Maersk doesn't know what's on them. Nobody can unload them. Thousands of trucks are lining up in lines miles long, and nobody can get in because the checkpoint to that port is paralyzed.
So was the lesson that Sandworm learned from its attack on Ukraine that it also now could turn off the lights in New York City or at an American company, that it was successful in Ukraine and they could export it even further?
I think that is the first lesson of this book. We saw Sandworm experimenting with escalating innovations in attacking physical equipment. In their second blackout, they even seemed to be trying to do an attack that would destroy grid equipment, that could blow up a transformer inside of a transmission station, causing a potentially weeks or a month-long blackout, serious downtime. That could be done in the US, absolutely. But what I keep telling everyone about this book is that it's not a story of what could happen here. It's a story in part about what did happen here. Merck, the New Jersey pharmaceutical company, lost $870 million to NotPetya. NotPetya did $10 billion in damage globally. A scale of cyber attack we have never seen anywhere else in the world. It took down hospitals across the United States, paralyzing their medical record systems. I talked to IT administrators in hospitals who told me that they were looking at child patients' medical records that were missing updates because of this downtime, because of the paralysis of their digital systems. They were rushing to fix those records in time for children to have life-saving procedures or to be transferred to different hospitals. I mean, we can't even say for certain that NotPetya didn't harm someone's health or cost a human life.
How susceptible are we in the future to these kind of attacks? Have we learned from NotPetya and strengthened our cyber security?
I wish I could say that it wouldn't happen again, but everyone tells me that it likely will happen again, and it could be even worse the next time. And our systems are vulnerable. Our governments, our government, I think 2 administrations really have failed us on this. The Obama administration failed to talk about the fact that there was an escalating series of cyber attacks happening in Ukraine, doing things that should never have been allowed in the kind of global community. We should have, the Obama administration should have said, it's not okay for anybody to turn out the lights for civilians anywhere in the world, even if it's Ukraine, not just Ukraine, but outside of NATO, outside of our self-interest. But the Trump administration has failed too, because it took 8 months for the Trump administration to even say anything about NotPetya, the worst cyber attack in history that hit American soil. And in fact, they also have failed to talk about the fact that Sandworm, the same group of hackers, attacked the Olympics in 2018, destroyed the entire IT backend of the Olympics in the midst of the opening ceremony. This is a largely untold story that's in the book.
In South Korea.
And we have not actually, as a country, talked about that. The U.S. government has not named Russia as the perpetrator of that attack. This is a failure of diplomacy.
Why don't we hear more from the Trump administration about these attacks from Russia?
Well, as you can imagine, for one thing, the Trump administration is not fond of talking about Russian hacking for obvious reasons. This is a black mark on the administration's record. I think it in fact is something that Trump is allergic to speaking about. And I have heard stories of these briefings being happening inside the White House, and then you try to bring the information to Trump, and you're sort of told, it's not good timing. We don't really want to speak about the fact that Russian hackers, Sandworm, tried to destroy a transmission station in the capital of Kiev and caused an unprecedented blackout, because it just reminds him of how he essentially was helped, how he cheated in the 2016 election.
And as you say, Sandworm may have its design set on the United States in bigger terms than it already has hit. The new book is Sandworm, A New Era of Cyber War and the Hunt for the Kremlin's Most Dangerous Hackers. It is fascinating. Andy Greenberg, thanks for explaining it to us. Washington Post, it's entitled Enough.